Insane, crazy, psycho. We've all heard these terms on TV, in movies, and even in newspapers. But how do these descriptors shape our opinions about the mentally ill? This study seeks to answer that question, particularly examining television's impact on kids' perceptions and attitudes toward those suffering from mental illness. This study examines two possible factors that could influence a person's opinion about someone suffering from mental illness. The first being the cumulative overall exposure to television, and the second, the cumulative selective exposure to specific television content. A very extensive literature review is included in this study. A lot of the research is based heavily on Dr. Otto Wall's findings, and he says that the role of violent, dangerous villain is the one most commonly assigned to mentally ill characters in the mass media. Research on this topic goes back as far as the early 80s with Dr. Wall, and the evidence is pretty overwhelming. Strong stereotypes exist across all different types of media, including print and audiovisual. All that past research supports the main claim that drives this study, that stigmas are attached to those suffering from mental illness. Often, mentally ill people are perceived to be dangerous, unreliable, or socially incompetent. Mentally ill characters in television and movies tend to be portrayed as unable to maintain functional relationships, they're shown as unintelligent or unskilled, and they're often depicted as being somewhat zombie like or disconnected from the world. But beyond these negative traits, the one that pops up over and over is that mentally ill characters are violent or unpredictable. In television specifically, characters are most often shown as dangerous and unstable, which is evident in the 70% of mentally ill TV characters who commit violent acts. Beyond that, more than 20% of those cases depict their actions leading to someone else's demise. And you might expect negative portrayals like these to show up only in fictional movies or television, but newspapers are just as guilty of these negative depictions. Stories involving violence are extremely common when discussing people with mental illness, and more often than not, mentally ill people who commit violent acts are more likely to make the headlines than those acting in a positive manner. There's a stark contrast in the percentages of violent characters shown on media when compared to the true statistics. The fact is that 9 out of 10 people suffering from mental illness never even show a sign of being violent, and only a small fraction of murders can be attributed to a mental disorder. Dr. Wall sums it up. Across different types of media and media content, persons who have a mental illness are heavily stereotyped and misrepresented as social and occupational failures who have a propensity for violence. Okay, so we've established that the media can be blamed for its unfair and inaccurate portrayals of mental illness, but why is that such a big deal? Do these portrayals have an impact? Do words hurt? How do they hurt? Who do they hurt? This study seeks to find that out, starting with kids and how negative depictions influence their attitudes toward the mentally ill.